deal with him on a business level because he always had to come out on top. So if you had any kind of confrontation with John, you had to figure out how to let him believe he was coming out on top, and you actually got what you want. So you had to know his personality going in. And that's the same of anyone. You know, I always tell people there were times when I sat in a room and I was the smartest person in the room, but I didn't let anybody know it because I wanted to hear what everybody had to say and let them think they were smarter. And there was times when I wasn't the smartest person in the room, but I wanted everybody to think I was. So it all depends on the situation and the circumstance. And, you know, those are skills that in that life, if you're active, you have to develop in order to succeed. And especially when you were dealing with the kind of money and business that I was dealing with, when everybody wanted a piece of it, everybody. There was nobody that didn't want to be involved. And there's powerful guys in that life that you had to keep at bay or you had to satisfy without, you know, ticking them off too much. So there was a lot of skill involved in that, I think. And I don't know how I got it. I was just fortunate.
You mentioned in the movie Goodfellas in one of the parts where he's like walking into the bar, and I actually didn't pick up on that until afterwards. I heard, you know, your name and stuff and saw the interviews. But what were guys like Henry Hill, like, and Jimmy Burke and some of Paul Vario, those guys in like that movie? Were they pretty accurate and depicted in that movie?
Well, I like Jimmy Burke a lot. I like Paul Vario a lot. You know, I knew them. They were a little bit older than me, but I knew them fairly well, and they were good guys, good people. I knew Paulie even better, and I liked him a lot. Henry, I knew Henry. Look, Henry was always a troubled soul. He had a drinking problem. He had a drug problem. It goes way back. I always tell people, Henry never looked better than he did in Goodfellas. He was never anywhere near that. Trust me.
Yeah.
You know, he was just, I mean, I liked him a little bit. He had given me some tips when he was doing that whole Boston college scandal, and I made a few bucks because I bet on a couple of the games. But, you know, that was the extent of my business. Look, the only reason they put me in Goodfellas was because I had a name at the time. I wasn't really involved with that crew business-wise in any way, but I had some name value. They threw me into it, and that was it. Was
Jimmy Burke as big and dangerous and deadly as people said he was?
Yeah, you got to understand, Jimmy Burke was not Italian.
Yeah.
You're not Italian, you're not a made guy. You're not a made guy, you're an outsider. That's it, bottom line. So as much, he didn't have real influence. The reason he got recognition was because he was an earner, and we always gave earners a little bit more recognition than those that didn't earn. But as far as him being an inside guy or being on the same level as made guys, he wasn't. And so they made him out to be kind of that way in that movie. You know, so some of it was accurate, but some of it wasn't.
And then the guy Tommy DeSimone, I believe his real name was. It was something changed a little bit in the movie. Was he as crazy as he was in the movie, like a wild man?
Well, nobody could be as crazy as Joe Pesci. He was just too good in the role.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a wild card, but he had a reputation.
Yeah. Who were some of the known deadliest people, like killer-wise, back in that time? Like a couple of names that are maybe passed now or in prison that like just everybody knew, like guys like you not to mess with, and these guys are some of the guys you didn't want to cross.
Well, let me make that clear, too, because people have a wrong impression. If you're talking about made guys, everybody in that life was capable. We weren't worried about somebody that might have been more of a killer than another guy, because if that's his thing, that's his thing. But that didn't mean the next guy wasn't just as capable.
Okay.
You know, because you had to be.
Yeah.
You had to be. It wasn't like, oh, if you want to do this, you can, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. No, you were told to do something. You had to do it, period. End of story. Now, if you weren't a real earner, well, you got to earn your way somehow in that life, so you're going to be given more of that work to do. You understand?
Yeah.
A guy like me, I'm bringing in all kind of money. They don't want to jeopardize me. Not saying that I didn't do what I had to do when I was told to or when I needed to, but for the most part, if you got a guy that's earning, that we're supporting, he's earning $1,000 a week because we're giving him a job. When there's work to do, that guy's going to do the work because he isn't doing anything else. Versus a guy that's bringing in, you know, a couple of $100,000 a year. They want to preserve that guy because he's the guy that's keeping the family going. So I think you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if one guy had more of a reputation to doing that is because he had to. You got to earn your way in that life one way. If you're not earning money, you're going to do it away. So we didn't fear those people. We just knew that they were doing their job. Now, maybe I will say this. There was some guys that maybe enjoyed that more than another guy. So maybe they were a little bit more cold-blooded about it. But again, we didn't fear them. We just knew, hey, that's how he is.
Okay.
Kind of understand that? Am I explaining it right?
No, it makes perfect sense, actually. And I think I heard you on another interview say, too, that most people actually weren't like earners like you, or like to even like not even on your level, but like as most people just weren't earning a lot of money. They were kind of doing more of the muscle work and like the, fighting and beating people up kind of stuff. Is that true?
Yeah, well, look, in our family at that time, we had 115 guys, made guys. I think maybe 20 of us were real earners.
Okay.
Maybe 25. The rest guys, we had to take care of them. Maybe they got a union job. Maybe they're doing this. So, yeah, when there was work to be done, they're the guys that had to do it.
Okay.
Because you got to earn your way. So one way or the other, you got to earn your way in that life. So, but yeah, I mean, everybody wasn't an earner. Most of the guys were not earners.
Just a few more questions, man. Then I want to wrap things up. But it's been an awesome interview. Really appreciate your time. I want to throw a couple like names out though, and just kind of get your perspective, because I've heard different stories on these guys from you and from other people, and I want your perspective because I think you know better than most. Jimmy Hoffa, what's the deal with him? There's a movie coming out, I believe, next month on him, on Netflix or something with De Niro and them guys. What's the true story about him?
Well, look. I mean, I'm certainly not saying anything that hasn't been said a million times. Hoffa, look, there's no doubt about it. The guy met his demise because he was told to step down or not to try to get back up, I should say. He didn't listen. He crossed the wrong people, and as a result, he got killed. And I will tell you this, that don't believe everything you see in the movie coming out. Enjoy the movie because it'll be a good one, because it's Scorsese and De Niro and the whole crew. But don't take it, as, okay, this is the gospel that happened with Hoffa, because it's not. And I know that from good information. Let's put it that way.
Like 100% certainty.
But enjoy the movie. It's going to be good. I think it's coming out Friday.
Oh, it's okay. Even sooner. Yeah. It looks like a really good movie, but the actual, 100% with 100% certainty, cool. The true story about what happened to him, and he got murdered.
Oh, 100%. No doubt about it. And, like I said, that's not the question is right now, where's his body buried? That's what everybody wants to know. And nobody's been able to find it. And I can tell you, they'll never find it.
Really?
Never.
Do you know where it is, or that it just wouldn't be found because of what happened to it?
I know what happened, and I know they'll never find his body.
Okay, fair enough.
And you could take that to the bank.
Yeah. JFK, was that mob related, or was that just a conspiracy theory that the mob had something to do with that?
100% mob related, and these papers that are confidential, or what's the word? That can't be exposed. They'll never be exposed, because you got to understand this. The government will never want it out, never want it to be revealed that the mob was able to get to a sitting president. Because, I mean, come on, how bad is that? But you could take that to the bank also. It was 100% mob related.
Wow. So you think the mob actually hired Lee Harvey Oswald to do that, and then they killed him afterwards because they didn't want to get back at them?
Let me put it this way without giving it was, you can bet it was 100% mob related.
Okay.
The details and everything are, no one's ever going to know the exact details, but I can guarantee you if those papers ever become public and they're not redacted, okay, you're going to see the connection.
Yeah. And the word's classified too. I just thought of it.
Classified,
and
that's it.
You're right. Trump was actually, a couple of years back, they were saying he was going to release him, and everyone was excited, and then he didn't release him, and everyone was like, what happened? So,
oh yeah, they must have got to Trump and said, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
He didn't release those papers.
He didn't do it.
No.
Whitey Bulger, that incident, he got murdered a couple months back, actually a year ago now. What did you think of that? Was that something that you knew was going to happen if he ever landed in regular prison with other people, general population?
Well, yeah. I mean, you get a highly publicized figure like that, who's definitely a government informant. you put them in general population, something's going to happen. So do I believe there was a setup? I spent 8 years in prison and visited my father for another 30. And I know the system is well better than anybody. And I can tell you that the Bureau of Prisons makes mistakes. And I think they put him in that prison by mistake. How do I know this? Because when Henry Hill was in prison and he was in separation, meaning he couldn't be around any other mob guys, they brought him to Terminal Island where there was 15 of us there, and they brought him there by mistake and put him in general population. And if it wasn't for the fact that I happened to see him and he saw me and he went in and PC'd up. In other words, he put himself in protective custody, he probably would have been dead within the next 24, 48 hours. And it was totally a Bureau of Prisons mistake. And the lieutenant at the time in Terminal Island told me they made a mistake. So could they have done the same thing with Whitey Bulger? Yeah, of course. Could they have done the same thing with Epstein? Okay, who was not mob related, but they screwed up big time. And now the investigation is coming out. The Bureau of Prisons made so many mistakes in watching Epstein. They were so negligent in so many ways. So the guy hung himself or whatever happened, they weren't doing their job. So yes, does it happen? I don't think it was a setup. I don't think the Bureau of Prisons, somebody paid them to put him in population. It was just a mistake. And believe me, our government makes mistakes. I think nobody will argue with that.
Yeah. Last name I want to ask you about is a guy named John A-Light, who's kind of making his rounds on YouTube and stuff. And I think he has a big beef with John Gotti's son, Jr. Is that guy credible at all? Or is it more that Gotti is and he's kind of like they're just beefing with each other?
All right. Let me say a couple of things. I don't know John A-Light. It was before my time. I was in Gotti's presence many times. I never once heard of or saw John A-Light. When I was on the street for 20 years, I never heard of him, never saw him, never heard his name or anything else. Having said that, remember, he was not a made guy. He was not an inside guy. I don't care who you are. If you're not a made guy, you're not going to get that much access to anybody that is a made guy when other made guys are around him all the time. Look, I had sworn early on, plus it's not my nature, to make my name by knocking other people. All I can tell you is take what he says with a grain of salt. I want to tell you another thing. This is common sense. I think he got on and he's claimed to killed 100 people.
Yeah.
I want you to find me somebody that was in World War II or Vietnam that killed 100 people. I want you to find anybody that you know that killed 100 people, unless they were a terrorist and blew up a whole building with 100 people in it. It's insane to say what he's saying and for anybody to believe that.
Yeah.
Okay, I wouldn't know 100 people to kill in my lifetime, and I spent 25 years, and my father wouldn't know 100 people that he had to kill. Neither would Gotti, neither would anybody else. I mean, Gotti was only said to kill 9 people. He must not be very good. Right? I mean, it's insane what he's saying. That's all I can tell you. Now, having said that, I got nothing against them. I am friends with the Gotti's family, and they obviously have a lot against them. He's made his name by knocking the Gottis. That's it. That's his claim to fame, as far as I see. And I think he should review some of the things he said. Look, his brother reached out to me, okay, quite a bit. I've had dialogue with his brother. And his brother has a lot of problems with what John is saying. So, look, take it with a grain of salt. And again, I have nothing against him. I have nothing for him or nothing against him. You asked me, and I'm giving you my take on it. Take it from there.
Fair enough. Good way to put it, I think. Michael, just kind of wrapping things up in a minute, man. I know you got to run. What is a last send-off takeaway? All the stuff we talked about today, the past that you've had, where you are right now with changing your life and your new message, what is it that you want people to take away from this call the most? What is like the one thing you want to leave our audience with?
Look, first of all, I want to thank anybody for listening in. Second, look, I don't claim to be better than anybody else. I just happen to be very fortunate, very blessed that I made the right decision and walked away from that life because it's not a life that's conducive to family or to a long life. Not now, not for the last 20, 30, 40 years. And I advise young people that aspire to be on the street, to be in gangs and all of that. I do my best to dissuade them and